A squad car rolled to a stop near the corner store. Two young officers stepped out, fresh faces with stiff uniforms and unsure movements. In front of them stood a large German shepherd, barking sharply, planted protectively in front of a little girl who had dropped her bag of candy. The dog, sensing danger that wasn't there, had reacted on instinct. His name was Shadow, and to him, Lily was everything. His barks were warnings, not threats, but the officers didn't see it that way. One of them reached for his weapon, too quickly, too recklessly. A single gunshot echoed. Lily screamed. Shadow crumpled. People stopped, turned, frozen in disbelief. Lily fell to her knees, pressing her hands to Shadow's side, her small voice begging him to stay. Blood seeped into the sidewalk. Someone in the growing crowd shouted that the dog wasn't attacking, that there had been no reason to shoot. But reason had left the moment fear took hold. Shadow lay motionless, and everything went still. Daniel got the call from a neighbor. He didn't rush to the scene. He didn't speak. He stood alone in his kitchen, a coffee cup cooling in his hand, as if a part of him had been yanked from deep inside and held up to the light again. He had spent years burying the past, building a quiet life in a quiet town. To most, he was just the guy who fixed engines and offered free oil changes to struggling families. A good man, a quiet man. No one ever asked about the tattoos on his arms or the scars he didn't talk about. They didn't know that Daniel had once been part of a team that operated where rules bent and shadows ruled. Delta Force, covert missions, skills honed through, fire and loss. He'd walked away from that life for Lily. After his wife died, he swore never to raise his daughter in a world of violence. He wanted peace. He had found it, or thought he had, until Shadow's body lay in the street and everything he had buried began to rise. He didn't yell. He didn't rage. The next morning, Daniel picked Lily up from her aunt's place, knelt beside her, and promised her safety in a voice so calm it could still oceans. She didn't respond, eyes red, fingers clenched. That night, while Lily slept, Daniel returned to the garage. Under loose boards, he found the steel footlocker. The lock clicked open. Inside, pieces of his old life waited, untouched. A laptop, booted up, humming low. He didn't open social media. He opened secure channels known only to men who no longer existed in official records. The background on the officers began to unfold like a map, not just incompetence, intent. They were linked to a spreading network of dirty cops, trafficking weapons and laundering money through raids and seizures justified by staged canine alerts. Shadow hadn't misread the moment. He'd sensed the threat before anyone else could. Daniel's days were now spent watching, taking notes, walking routes, logging who the officers met, when they slipped into alleyways, what time their radios went quiet. From the outside, he was a grieving man lost in memory. But inside, Daniel had shifted into something else, not vengeance, not rage, something colder, sharper. He moved silently through the night, dressed in plain black, a figure invisible to those who didn't know how to look. He wasn't out for revenge. He was out for answers, real answers, the kind no courtroom in that town was capable of delivering. His search led him to an old warehouse by the docks, long forgotten by most, but not by those who used it under cover of night. That's where the trail pointed, where the same officers who shot Shadow met after hours, trading more than just words. Daniel waited silently on a rooftop across the street, invisible in the dark. At precisely 2:13 a.m., a van arrived. Two familiar faces stepped out, lugging crates they moved like secrets. Daniel didn't just watch. He documented. Every image he captured told a story. Every movement became part of a larger truth. But surveillance wasn't enough. He needed more. Days later, Daniel infiltrated their digital systems with tools no civilian should have had. His fingers moved with quiet efficiency, cracking through firewalls, tracing hidden data paths. In minutes, a flood of information poured in: logs, coordinates, surveillance dates, payout trails, names both known and hidden. The scope of corruption was wider than he imagined, and the officers responsible for Shadow's death? They had another meeting set up, a closed-door session at a private residence, labeled innocently as a training debrief. Daniel didn't go in with weapons or threats. He wore plain clothes and walked to the door like any other man. When it opened, their casual arrogance evaporated. "Evening, officers," he said, voice calm, tone unreadable. "Thought we might clear a few things up." They laughed at first. Then Daniel placed a folder on the table. Their laughter died quickly. Inside were photos taken from the docks, audio clips of their whispered deals, bank statements, server logs, proof that couldn't be denied. "You think you're untouchable," Daniel said. "You made two mistakes. First, you underestimated who you were messing with. Second, you shot the wrong dog." They didn't get time to respond. Doors crashed open. Armed federal agents swept in like a wave, storming the room with practiced force. Daniel's former contacts, men who owed him favors and remembered the kind of soldier he once was, had been listening the entire time. It was a sting, carefully orchestrated. Everything the officers said after opening that door was recorded. Within moments, the scene erupted into shouts, cuffs, and chaos. Corruption was rooted out by the very man they thought they could ignore. News traveled fast. Headlines screamed of crooked cops and secret stings. TV anchors speculated about the anonymous man who had sparked it all. But Daniel never gave his name. He vanished the same way he'd arrived, without fanfare, without a word. He didn't want awards. He didn't need applause. What mattered was the silence in his daughter's room as she finally slept through the night. What mattered was that Shadow's loyalty hadn't ended in vain. Emily watched the reports quietly, her eyes misting not from grief, but from something deeper, understanding. Her father never needed to shout to be powerful. His strength had always been quiet, but now she could see it clearly. He had walked through fire for her, for justice, for Shadow. The town changed after that. Officers who had looked the other way were replaced. Policies were rewritten. There was talk of integrity, of reform. No one ever named the man responsible, but everyone whispered about him. And at home, Daniel stood before the fireplace, gently, placing a framed photo of Shadow on the mantel. "You weren't just a dog," he whispered. "You were my partner. You were family." One evening, he returned home with a small bundle wrapped in a blanket. A nervous little German shepherd pup peeked out, ears twitching. He placed it gently in front of Emily. "He's not to replace Shadow," Daniel said, "but maybe a new start." Emily knelt down, hesitant. The puppy sniffed her hand, then licked her fingers and curled into her lap as if he'd always belonged there. "Let's call him Echo," she said softly, "so Shadow's spirit never really leaves us."